Billionaire businessman and retail mogul Les Wexner is set to be deposed later today by the House Oversight Committee in connection with its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Wexner has never faced criminal charges related to Epstein, but the two were associated for years, as Epstein served as Wexner's financial advisor. Wexner says he cut ties in 2007 after discovering Epstein had stolen or misappropriated hundreds of millions of dollars. Still questions about why he would give him control of those millions in the first place. Got to imagine we're going to hear about that later. Documents released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act list Wexner as a co-conspirator or secondary co-conspirator in Epstein's sex trafficking case, though investigators noted limited evidence regarding his involvement. It's unclear exactly what Congress members are going to ask during this deposition, which was moved from D.C. to Wexner's mansion in New Albany, Ohio, due in part to the 88-year-old's advanced age. Joining us now, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg. So, Dave, just first, walk us through what we know about Wexner and Epstein's relationship. Why is this such a big deal? Because to me, when I saw the committee had set this depo, I was like, OK, this could actually prove to be informative if he answers questions.
Yes, good to be with you, Allie. There's never been any allegation that Wexner has participated in the sex abuse of children, but he always needed to be questioned under oath because he was the primary source of Epstein's wealth and his social legitimacy. So I think he's going to be asked what specific services did Epstein provide that justified his extraordinary trust in him, such as giving Epstein power of attorney and enormous compensation. I mean, one thing we still don't know about Epstein is how did he accumulate such wealth? What were his sources of income? And how much did Wexner pay him over the years? So there are a lot of open questions. Plus, Wexner said repeatedly that he believed he could trust Epstein based on positive reports from several friends. Well, who were these friends? Does he know names of co-conspirators? So there are a lot of questions he'll be asked today.
Yeah, and this is really just more of the House Oversight Committee's attempt to, A, gain a better understanding of what the orbit was like around Epstein, answer some of those key questions like how did he get his money and how did he find himself in such insulated high echelon social circles. But then there's also the advice that the survivors themselves gave to these lawmakers, and they just said, follow the money. And so there is that line of questioning. And then there's also members like Jasmine Crockett on MS Now with Jen Psaki last night saying that they assume that Wexner might come in and say, well, I don't recall a lot of it, which is a way for you to not incriminate yourself, not plead the fifth, but also say that you don't remember so you don't have to answer questions. I mean, how do you get around that if that's what arises?
Yeah, he's of advanced age, so he could say that, and they could try to present him with some evidence that he knows more than he let on. Like, for example, he said he cut ties with Epstein in 2007. Yeah. But then how do you explain the transfer of his Manhattan mansion to Epstein's company in 2011 for $0? Also, what did Epstein mean when he wrote in an undated letter to Wexner that he and Epstein had, quote, gang stuff for over 15 years? So if I were a prosecutor there, I would want to know if Wexner was unaware or just willfully blind to Epstein's activity and whether he crossed the line into a criminal conspiracy. So you're going to look for evidence of overt acts, like information on that transfer of the New York mansion and the power of attorney to Epstein. That would suggest more than just a passive friendship.
Yeah, I've got questions about how you're transferring mansions for $0. I think that's just one of many. And then I think the bigger one that looms over all of this, yes, it's information finding for a larger investigation in Congress. But then there's also the question of, can he be charged with any crime in connection with Epstein? Because he's already been listed by DOJ as a co-conspirator or a secondary co-conspirator. But they've also said that there's limited evidence around it. So is there any future prosecution, obviously not by Congress, that's not the role they play here, but that Congress could lay out that a DOJ in the future, doesn't seem likely this one would, but who knows, could prosecute on?
I think it's unlikely that Wexner will ever be charged with a crime relating to Epstein. Remember his advanced age, there's statute of limitations issues. There's no evidence that he actually participated himself with the child sex abuse. But this deposition could provide a roadmap come Federal Victims Trafficking Protection Act. And New York even has its own law called the Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act. And the city reopened a new 18-month filing window there. So under these federal and local laws, the victims can sue those who enabled the sexual abuse, not just the perpetrators themselves. Civil courts, remember, only need a finding of preponderance of the evidence. That's a relatively low burden. Is it more likely than not that it occurred, rather than the much higher burden in criminal court of proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt?
I think that is such an important distinction as we focus on the ways that accountability might be served through a typical court of justice. Former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg, laying out what we might see later today and why it's so important. We're also going to hear from those members on the ground in Ohio at around noon in a press conference. I'm personally interested in what goes down. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Allie.
Before we take a break, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who led the bipartisan push to release the Epstein files, says he expects more Republicans to break from President Trump on House votes leading up to the midterms. This is in an interview with Politico magazine, where Massie was asked about the GOP split with the president over the Epstein files. Citing a razor-thin majority, Massie said, quote, "On any given day, I would just need one or two of my own co-conspirators," very different word use than we were using it earlier, "to get something done." He went on to say he predicts even more GOP defections once lawmakers clear their Republican primaries. It's actually a pretty fair bet, and we're going to see this majority go from 1 seat to 2 seats. Still going to be very tight, but there's some special elections spiced in on the calendar that are going to change the number. So you're going to hear me keeping you updated as we go through the calendar.